get to do some screenshots. Nope. Why? Stop looking at the viewfinder. How do people do this? Hi everyone, I'm Audrey and welcome to Chapter and Converse. If this is your first time here, well, welcome to the club. It's my first time too. And I thought for my first video, I would do a reading rewind and talk about some of the books that I read in November. And I'm actually gonna cheat and talk about one book that I read in October also. So let's get started. So the first book is actually a reread, and that's Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. So I had originally read this book probably 2013-ish. I read Gone Girl first. That was my first book by her when it first came out. And then kind of very quickly snatched this one up because I was interested to see what else she had written. So this was her first book, if you didn't know. And not gonna lie, for a debut, it's really impressive. It's dark and it's twisted and there's some really unlikable characters in here. And you know what I really love about Gillian Flynn and her writing is that she really goes there. She doesn't hold back. She doesn't kind of shy away from anything. She gets really dark, really gritty, kind of shows all the dark and gross sides of people. You know, unlikable characters are kind of a thing in her books, and it's actually going to kind of be a thing in all of the books that I read this month, which was not at all intentional. It just sort of turned out that way. But this book, so I wanted to reread it for two reasons. One, it kept coming up over and over again in some of the Booktube videos I'd been seeing, and I'd been kind of down a rabbit hole of author interviews on YouTube, and Gillian Flynn kept coming up. And also, obviously this has been on HBO recently, so I don't have HBO, but over Thanksgiving weekend, there was free HBO, so I promptly programmed my DVR to tape all 8 episodes of this, and then wanted to read this again before I rewatched it, to refresh my memory, even though I remembered the gist of it and I remembered the ending of it, but also I was curious to see how the HBO show stacked up against the book. And I have to say, I think they did a tremendous job and stayed really true to the book, and I'm sure part of that had to do with Gillian Flynn being involved in it. So, I mean, I would recommend this hands down, whether you are new to Gillian Flynn, whether you have read other books of hers but haven't gotten to this one yet. I mean, it's dark and it's twisted, and it, you know, it focuses on the main character's Camille Preaker, and she's in her early 30s, she's a reporter, and she winds up being sent back to her hometown, which is this like 3,000 person town in Missouri, because two 13-year-old girls have been murdered. So she's sent back to do a bit of reporting on it and kind of that hometown feel. But Camille has left her hometown for lots of reasons, which we come to find out about. And she's got a lot of dark secrets and a lot of kind of a dark past there, and a bad relationship with her mom, kind of a non-existent relationship with her stepfather, even though he's been her stepfather since she was basically born. And she also has a stepsister who's 13 who she doesn't really know and gets to know by coming back there. And she's just haunted by her childhood and her memories. So again, it's dark, and Camille's got a lot going on. That's putting it mildly. If you read the book, you know that I'm really putting that mildly. But again, I would recommend this hands down to anyone who's looking for a good read, and to really, you know, get that early glimpse of Gillian Flynn's writing. And I'm also completely desperate for her next book to come out, so I'm going to fill the void with her previous books. So the second book that I have is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. Now, I've actually had this book for about a year, and I would say one of my faults, or maybe it's not a fault, maybe it's just common with people who love books, is I am constantly making lists of books I want to read. I'm constantly listening to recommendations, whether it's on Goodreads or YouTube or through friends of mine, or just browsing the bookstore, which is basically one of my most favorite things to do. And I will snatch a book that either catches my interest because of the cover, because of the story, pick it up, and then inevitably it winds up on the shelf and doesn't get read right away. So that's what happened with this book. And it's one of those books where I'm sorry it took me so long to read it, but I'm glad I finally did. So this is kind of loosely, and I'm using the term loosely, strangers on a plane, to take a little something from Patricia Highsmith. So we have this man and this woman, and it's Ted and Lily, and they meet in the London airport their flight's delayed, they meet at the bar, they're both having a drink, and inevitably, they start chatting it up a bit, having a couple cocktails, and lips get a little bit loose. And Ted winds up confiding in her that he's having some problems in his marriage and his wife is cheating on him, and kind of half jokingly is like, I kind of want to kill her. And Lily's basically like, you should do that. And so there you go. So they sit together on the plane, they arrive back in Boston, and the conversation continues. And that's where I'm going to stop because I'm not going to let anything go. So this book really surprised me. I got through this really quickly. I kind of thought I knew where it was going because I'm very familiar with Strangers on a Train. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's what's going to happen. It's not what's going to happen. So I would 100% recommend picking up this book. I have very quickly during kind of Cyber Week, Black Friday, grabbed a couple more Peter Swanson books. I'm excited to see what else he has. But this was such a good book. I lived in Boston for a long time, so I'm also a complete sucker for anything that takes place in Boston, even for just a few references and places I know or streets that I know or neighborhoods. So Boston fan or not, this is a great book. It's a great thriller and highly recommend. The next book that I picked up is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. So this is a book that I had actually read about and was interested in, but 100% would have been a cover buy if I knew nothing about it, because this is literally probably one of the most beautiful books on my bookshelf. And I have been a fan of Lisa Jewell since her chick lit books like Ralph's Party and 30 Nothing. Quickly picked this one up and was really excited to read it. And this book, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this one, and I get it, but I also really enjoyed it. So for me, one of the things I really loved about her other books, kind of her chick lit books that I had talked about, is the characters and the stories with the characters and that development. So I would say this is definitely not a thriller, a little bit of a mystery. So kind of the premise of this one is 15-year-old girl goes missing, kind of backpack on, off to the library, never comes home again. And her family, of course, is devastated, and the police have no leads and they don't find her. And fast forward 10 years later, and the parents are divorced, the mother's still grieving, she has 2 other children that she's basically kind of shoved to the side because all of these years she's just been thinking about her daughter who was gone. And what we're really seeing is how the family dynamic is working, the relationship with her ex-husband, the relationship with her children, and really how the mom is trying to move on with her life. And she winds up meeting a man at a cafe, and they kind of wind up hitting it off, and then the story goes into their relationship and what she's doing with him. And sort of the question is, what is going on with him? Because one day she's at his house and she meets his daughter, who is, I think, like 9 or 10, and his daughter is very reminiscent of her daughter who went missing. So things become very confusing. There's a lot of questions. One of the things about this book, and I think one of the criticisms, is the explanations are given throughout, so the reader knows the information even though the characters don't. So we know more than they do, and if you're a real thriller lover, you kind of like to be figuring out the book and figuring out the mystery. So here you sort of know what happened. So I think that's why a lot of people didn't like it. I did enjoy the characters in this. You definitely have to suspend some disbelief. There are some things that happen in here. You're just kind of like, it just doesn't seem real. I mean, it's fiction, it's escapism. So again, I liked it for the characters. I really like Lisa Jewell's writing. I will continue to pick up books by her. I'm excited to read more of her sort of mystery-esque books. And again, prettiest book I own at this point. So call me shallow, but that's okay. I can live with that. So the next book I read is called Lie to Me by J.T. Ellison. This is the first J.T. Ellison book that I have read. And this is one of those books where I went into the bookstore, was doing the book browse, kind of pulled it off the shelf and literally stood there and started to read the first few pages of it. And I was hooked. I was hooked by the writing. I was hooked by the style of it. I was kind of all in from the get-go. This has, I would say, sort of Gone Girl elements to it, but don't let that dissuade you from reading it. So but it's different. It's not like a copycat or anything. So this is a couple, Ethan and Sutton. They're married, they're writers. From the outside looking in, they have the perfect relationship, a very happy marriage, but their friends know a little bit otherwise. They're kind of like, never or forever. They fight, they love. And, when the book opens, and again, no spoilers happening here, it's nothing that you can't read on the back. when the book opens, Ethan, comes out to the kitchen for breakfast in the morning, and typically, Sutton is there, and she's placed out his breakfast, and she's placed out his part of the newspaper, but she's not there. And instead, there's a note on the counter that's basically like, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. Don't come looking for me. So not the first time she's done something like this, but in the past she's gone to one of her friends. So he's always known where she was, and he starts calling around to her friends to see where she is, and nobody's heard from her. Nobody's seen her in days. Her wallet is behind her cell phone, her computer, her car, everything. So the question is, where did she go? She took absolutely nothing with her. No one's heard from her, so where is she? And here we get into a bit of the Gone Girl aspect of the police are called in. All eyes are on the husband because, of course, the husband did it. And there's no body, there's no Sutton. And we start to unravel their marriage and their lies and what their friends think and what people think from the outside looking in and what the police think. And it takes you on a bit of a ride. This was another one that I read really quickly, was eager to see what was happening next. There's really short chapters in this, so it moves at a really great clip. It is not Gone Girl, so I will give you that. All in, I really enjoyed it. I know I haven't been giving star reviews on these books. I would give this a 4-star. There's one element in this where I had a hard time sort of swallowing one piece of it, so to speak, and I'm not going to give anything away. I think it's a great book. Again, I will definitely read more of J.T. Ellison. I thought this was a great one, so would highly recommend getting this one as well. I'm going to cheat a little bit and share a book that I read in October, because for all of November, I'm actually filming this on November 30th. I've been doing National Novel Writing Month, and for those of you who are familiar with it, great. And for those of you who aren't, it's an online-based creative writing sprint, I guess is kind of how you can explain it. So from November 1st to November 30th, you are challenged to write 50,000 words in 30 days. It is for aspiring writers, it is for published writers, it is for, you could do graphic novels, you can do anything, but it's really supposed to be, a kick to get you started, to get you in the seat every day, to give you a challenge. It's an internet online community. It's completely international. It's free. You can meet people within, your genre that you're writing in. You can meet people within your neighborhood, within your cities. And there's all this online support, and it's a nonprofit, and it's completely amazing. But writing 50,000 words in 30 days takes quite a bit of time. So I've had less time to read, but I am very happy to say that I crossed the finish line 2 days ago, over 50,000. I'm still writing. I'm around 53,000 now. It is kind of one of the most gratifying things to do. There are days that are hard as hell, and there are days that are totally amazing. If you're interested in it, I definitely recommend looking it up. It also goes by NaNoWriMo, so I will leave the links in the description box below if you're interested. But again, I've committed a bunch of my month to writing, so I'm a little bit behind on reading. So again, I'm going to cheat and share a book that I read in October, and that's Carolyn Kepnes's You. And pretty sure I'm the last person on earth to know about this book, to have heard about this book, to have read this book, because when I started to look into it, so I'll admit, now a Lifetime series, that's how I found out about it. And I had seen a preview, I think it even came across on YouTube rather than even on TV. And it completely caught my eye. And there's also this completely eerie version of I Want You to Want Me in the trailer, which basically sucked me in. And Penn Bagley from Gossip Girl is the lead in this. So again, I won't give away any spoilers, but when I saw the trailer for it, I was completely sucked in. Absolutely, I'm going to watch this. I would say kind of like that show Unreal. It's the least Lifetime show I've ever seen. And I watched the first episode, I was totally sucked in, and it was at that point that I learned that this was actually a book before it was a show, and it was at that point that I decided I need to go out and buy this book and read it before I watch any more of the show. So, more than you ever needed to know, but here we are. So, this book follows Joe, who is a manager in a bookstore in Manhattan, and one day this girl Beck walks in and she's looking for a book, and he's kind of instantly smitten with her, and they flirt a bit. And he's gone for her. So he starts to look her up on social media. Everything is public. He finds out all sorts of things about her, who her friends are, where she lives, what she's into, and starts inserting himself into her life. And basically he's a stalker. Basically he's kind of creepy, but I think the biggest surprise in this is that I kind of liked him, and he does horrible things. He will stop at nothing to be with her. He will let nothing stand in his way. And this is another one. Like I said, I read a lot of books this month. Well, I read 4 books, and this one I'm cheating, with unlikable characters in it. And I mean, he's a stalker and he's a horrible person. So yeah, he's not very likable, but also Beck, this girl that he's in love with, she's kind of horrible too. And she does a lot of really horrible things, and she's kind of got some horrible friends and some horrible people in her life. So I don't want to say I sympathize with him, but I kind of got him. And it's creepy in the sense because it's written in second person, so the whole time he's saying you, so it feels like he's talking to you. And I think maybe part of what helped me is that I was picturing Penn Badgley in my head, and he wasn't at all creepy in Gossip Girl. Although I was watching this interview with him, and he had said this book was very much if Gossip Girl had taken a really dark turn out of the gate and Dan had kind of creeped on Serena, it would be you. And I had that in my head also, which was completely right. So I loved that part of it. He did a great job in the TV show, but this was such a good book. It was another one where like I was all in, I was down the rabbit hole. I was completely excited to see what was going to happen next, but also kind of horrified what was going to happen next. And again, you kind of understood some of the things he was doing, even though they were heinous. So it's good. It's really good. And there's a sequel to it called Hidden Bodies, which I've purchased, but I haven't read yet because I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a break. Sometimes I have a tendency where if I discover a writer who has a bunch of books out and maybe they're new to me, I'll gobble up a bunch of those books and read them all back to back. And I feel like it's kind of like binging on Netflix, where it's like, okay, I cannot possibly watch another episode of, insert here, whatever it is that you're binging on these days. So I'm trying to kind of move between authors, but obviously this month I just went completely crazy for all things thriller and mystery and suspense, which again is really what I'm interested in, but trying to branch out from that. It's kind of the ones that I go to. But this book was great. I will say the TV show also, it was good. So it was like an 8-part, as they tend to do a lot of times on TV shows. They've changed things. They've added new characters, which I didn't really think were necessary, but I understand they need to kind of zhuzh it up and, make it a little bit more dramatic. They changed a few elements, but at the core, it was very true to what the book was. And I thought, again, I think Penn Badgley just did an amazing job at this. So highly recommend reading it before you watch it, but it's definitely worth doing both. So those are my books to talk about. So thank you so much for watching and for staying as long as you have. Like I said, this is my first video, so I'm really kind of dipping my toe in the pond here, and I've got some planned content. I'm going to do like the new YouTuber video, the tag, so I'm going to get that out there. As I said, I did some Cyber Week Black Friday shopping, so I've got some hauls coming and some other ideas for some videos, so I would love if you would come back and check them out. I'd also love to hear what books you read this month, if you've read any of the books that I read, what you thought of them, if you liked them, if you didn't, if you have any recommendations of other books that you've read that you think should be added to my growing list of TBRs, because I know there's going to be like a Boxing Day sale at Book Depository, so it might as well build up my list now. So that's everything. Thank you guys again for watching, and hopefully we'll see you back here soon.